I didn't plan on seeing him that night. Actually, I didn't think I'd ever see him again. Which is why when I opened the hotel room door and saw his face, I literally forgot how to breathe for a few seconds. "Toby?" he said, like he wasn't totally sure it was me. And I just stood there like an idiot, gripping the metal door handle, heart thudding in my ears. It was him, Liam Foster, the guy the first spent 4 years trying to forget. He looked older, obviously, but not in a bad way. His jaw was sharper now, dusted with a bit of scruff. His hair was shorter, messier than I remembered. He wore a black hoodie with the sleeves pushed up, exposing forearms that weren't nearly as scrawny as they used to be. But it was still him, the guy who sat next to me all through senior year biology. The guy who used to copy my notes, make me laugh when I was too anxious to eat lunch, and completely ghosted me after prom. I blinked. What are you doing here?" He looked just as thrown as I felt. I think I've got the wrong room." I stepped back slowly, letting him glance past me into the room, except he didn't walk away. He just stood there. Then his eyes landed on my name tag, the one clipped to my lanyard. The same one I'd been wearing all weekend at this dumb software developers conference in Atlanta. "Wait," he said, his brows pulling together. "Are you presenting?" "Tomorrow," I said. "Data visualization tools for early-stage startups." His eyes widened a little. Holy shit. "You're the Toby Hammond who wrote that automap script?" I almost laughed. "Yeah, that's me." Liam let out this low whistle like he was genuinely impressed. Then he nodded to the room. "You here alone?" I hesitated. "Yeah." He looked around awkwardly, then rubbed the back of his neck. "Okay, so this is really random, but I'm crashing with my cousin this weekend. She's speaking on a panel tomorrow. Told me to pick up her badge from room 716, which," he gestured to the door, "I assumed was this one." I glanced at the room number behind me. 617. I nodded slowly. "You're a floor off," he laughed under his breath. "Figures." For a moment, we both stood there. The air between us felt weird, too full of things we hadn't said, memories we hadn't touched in years. Then he glanced back at me. "You look good, by the way." I swallowed. "So do you." Another pause. I didn't invite him in. I wasn't sure if I should. I wasn't sure if I could. "Do you, want to catch up?" he asked suddenly, as if the word surprised even him. "Grab a drink or something?" I didn't know how to answer. Part of me wanted to slam the door and pretend I never saw him. Another part, the part that never really got closure, wanted to say yes so badly it hurt. "I can't," I said, then instantly hated how it sounded. But he nodded, like he understood. "Yeah, no, of course." He took a step back, but just before turning to leave, he looked up again, his voice softer now. "I'm sorry, by the way, for everything." Then he walked away. I shut the door, locked it. Then I sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor for a long time, because no matter how far I'd come, no matter how much I tried to convince myself that high school didn't matter anymore, that seeing Liam again wouldn't affect me, I was wrong. He was back. And I wasn't ready for it. I didn't sleep much that night. I tossed and turned in that scratchy hotel bed, staring at the popcorn ceiling, like it held some kind of answer. My mind wouldn't shut up. It kept replaying everything, from the moment I opened the door, to the way Liam said he was sorry, to how his eyes lingered like he had more to say. I hated how fast I fell back into it. Into him. Like no time had passed. When I woke up the next morning, if you could even call it waking up, I felt like crap. My mouth was dry, my back ached, and I had exactly 45 minutes to shower, get dressed, and head down to the ballroom for my presentation. I forced myself through it, tied the tie, smiled at strangers, did my usual small talk about UI/UX design tools with over-caffeinated tech bros, Pretended like my world hadn't just been thrown completely off its axis 12 hours earlier. The talk went fine. People clapped. One guy asked for my GitHub. Another wanted to collab on a side project. I nodded through it all, shook hands, and slipped out as fast as I could once it was over. Back in my room, I collapsed onto the bed, kicked off my shoes, and stared at the ceiling again. For a moment, everything was still. Then my phone buzzed. I picked it up, assuming it was an email or a LinkedIn notification. It wasn't. Unknown number, hey. It's Liam. Got your number from the conference app. Hope that's not weird. I sat up slowly, staring at the screen like it might self-destruct. A second message came in a few seconds later. I'm in the lounge downstairs. If you're around and want to talk, I'm here. No pressure. Just 2 lines. No emoji, no extra punctuation. Just him. I stared at the message for a full minute. Then I stood up and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like someone who hadn't slept and barely made it through a presentation. But I also looked like someone who needed answers. I grabbed my hoodie and headed downstairs. The lounge wasn't anything special. Just a corner of the lobby with a few leather chairs, a gas fireplace, and a tiny overpriced bar. But there he was, sitting in the far corner, nursing a beer, scrolling on his phone like he hadn't just detonated a grenade in my life. He looked up the second I walked in, stood up, gave me that same smile I remembered from the cafeteria years ago. Easy, open, like he wasn't hiding anything. Hey, he said. Hey. He nodded toward the chair across from him. You want to sit? I didn't say anything, just walked over and lowered myself into the seat. He sat back down but didn't speak at first. Neither did I. The silence stretched out until it became its own thing. Finally, he said, I know I'm probably the last person you ever wanted to see. Not the last, I said. He smiled slightly. That bad, huh? I didn't smile back. What do you want, Liam? He looked down at his beer, turned the bottle in slow circles on the table, then finally looked up again. To explain, I crossed my arms. Okay, explain why you ghosted me after prom, after everything. He flinched like I'd slapped him. I was scared, he said. Of what? Of you, of me, of what I felt. I stared at him, trying not to let that hit too hard. You kissed me, Liam. In your car. You kissed me, and then disappeared. I know. Do you? I asked, voice rising. Do you know what that did to me? I thought I imagined it. I thought I made it up in my head. You didn't, he said quickly. I remember every second of it. I think about it all the time. I looked away. Jaw tight. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I liked you, Toby. I liked you a lot. That night, it wasn't a mistake. It was the first real thing I'd ever done. Then why? Because I didn't know how to be that guy, he interrupted. I didn't know how to face it. I was so used to being the straight one, the athlete, the guy who dated girls. I couldn't imagine what it would mean to be anything else. You didn't even text me, I said, quieter now. You could have just said something. Anything. He nodded. I know. I'm sorry. I looked at him again. He looked different now. Not just older. Softer, maybe. More real. What changed? I asked. He let out a breath. Everything. Life. I grew up. I dated. I made mistakes. And I kept thinking about you, wondering what would have happened if I hadn't been such a coward. He looked at me. And then I saw you yesterday, and I couldn't walk away again. I didn't know what to say. Because part of me wanted to scream at him, to ask why he thought he could just walk back into my life like nothing happened. But another part, deep and quiet and aching, was glad he did. We sat there for a long time, just 2 guys in a hotel lounge with too much history and not enough words. And then he said something that changed everything. I still think about that night, he said. About kissing you. I still want to. I didn't know what to do with that sentence. I still want to, he'd said. Just like that. No build-up. No overthinking. Just him, putting it out there like it wasn't the first real thing he'd said to me in 4 years. My stomach flipped. My heart thudded in my ears. "You can't just say that," I told him, voice quiet but sharp. "You don't get to just drop a bomb like that after ghosting me for half a decade." "I know," he said quickly. "I'm not expecting anything. I needed to say it. I've been holding it in for too long." I leaned back in my seat, trying to breathe, trying to think straight. Because no matter how much I wanted to pretend I'd moved on, there was a part of me, small, quiet, but stubborn, that still remembered what it felt like when he kissed me that night. Still remembered how I'd gone home afterward, laid on my bed, stared at the ceiling, and tried to replay it second by second. And how the silence that followed, the unanswered texts, the way he avoided me in the halls, had carved something deep into me I hadn't wanted to admit was still there. "I'm not the same kid you kissed in your car," I finally said. "I know," he said, softer now. "And I'm not the same guy who ran away." We sat there in silence again, the space between us thick, with everything we hadn't said for too long. Then he asked, "Do you still think about it?" I looked at him, jaw tight. "What do you think?" He smiled. Not smug, not arrogant, just sad, like he already knew the answer and hated himself for it. "Do you want to walk?" he asked suddenly. "Where?" "Anywhere." We left the hotel and wandered down the street, not really talking, not really heading anywhere in particular. It was one of those humid, late spring nights where the city lights feel softer and the air hums with something unspoken. We ended up at some little park near the river. Just us, a few benches, and the sound of water moving slowly in the dark. He sat down first. I sat next to him. "You know," he said after a long stretch of silence, "I used to check your socials all the time. I'd see your photos, your posts. You always looked like you were doing well, but I never saw anyone in them. No boyfriend, no clues." I stared straight ahead. "Because there wasn't anyone." He turned to look at me. "Why not?" I shrugged. "Maybe because I never really let anyone in after you." That landed heavy between us. He didn't say anything for a while. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I keep saying that, I know. But I mean it." I looked at him. His expression was open in a way it never used to be. Honest. Vulnerable. And I hated how much that still got to me. "Why now?" I asked. "Why say all this now?" He gave a small shrug. "Because I saw you, and I couldn't walk away again. And maybe I don't get another chance after this, but I'd rather say too much than leave it all unsaid." We sat there a while longer. Then he turned toward me and asked, "Do you want me to come up to your room?" It wasn't sleazy. It wasn't even suggestive. It was a question. One that held more than just physical weight. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him. Thought about all the what-ifs, all the nights I used to stare at my phone hoping his name would pop up. Thought about how tired I was of pretending that didn't mean anything. Then I stood up. He stood too. And I said, "Yeah." The elevator ride back up was quiet. We stood side by side, not touching, barely breathing. The air between us felt electric. My hand shook slightly when I swiped my keycard at the door. It beeped. I pushed it open. He followed me inside. For a second, we both just stood there in the dim hotel room, like we didn't know what came next. Then he said, quietly, "Toby." And I turned to face him. He was so close, closer than he'd been in years. His hand brushed against mine, and I let it stay there. "I missed you," he said, voice barely a whisper. Then he kissed me. It wasn't like the first time. Hurried, nervous, hidden behind the steering wheel of his car. This kiss was slower, softer, like he was asking, not assuming. And this time, I kissed him back. It started out gentle, careful. His lips moved against mine like he was waiting for me to change my mind. And maybe, if this had been 4 years ago, I would have pulled away, panicked, shut down. But not this time. This time, I leaned in. Because no matter how much resentment I had stacked between us, something about this still felt real, still felt right. His hands found my waist. Mine curled around the back of his neck. For a few long, slow seconds, it was like the rest of the world stopped existing. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were a little breathless. "I've been wanting to do that since the second I saw you again," Liam said, his voice low and hoarse. I swallowed hard. "You don't get to just say that like we don't have 4 years of—" "I know," he cut in gently, "and I'm not trying to skip past it. I'm just trying to be honest." We stood there, still close. Close enough I could see the way his eyes darted nervously between mine, like he was afraid of how I'd respond. And for once, I didn't want to fight it. So I took a step back. Not away from him, just to breathe, to let it sink in. "I don't know what this is," I said. "Or what you want from me." He nodded. "That's fair." There was a long pause, and then I asked the thing that had been in the back of my mind since the moment he showed up at my door. "Are you seeing anyone?" "No," he said immediately. "I haven't in a while." "Guys?" I asked. He hesitated. "Not really. You're the only guy I've ever really—" He trailed off, but I knew what he meant. I nodded slowly. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted from the emotional whiplash of the past 24 hours. Liam sat beside me, keeping a little space between us, like he knew not to push. "After prom?" I started. "After we kissed, I didn't know what it meant to you. I thought it was just a moment, a drunk mistake or something you regretted. You never talked to me again. You deleted me from everything." "I was terrified," he said softly. "Not of you, of myself." I turned to him. "You could have just said that." "I know," he said, "but I was a coward." We sat in silence for a few beats. The kind of silence that feels heavy, but not hostile. Like something was healing in the space between us. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. "I thought about writing you," he said. "A few times. Drafted messages, emails. Never sent them. Because I thought you hated me." I didn't respond right away, because honestly I wasn't sure if he was wrong. "I did," I finally admitted. "For a while," he nodded. "Do you still?" I looked at him, really looked at him. He wasn't the same boy I'd fallen for in high school. He was older now. A little more weathered. A little more serious. But his eyes, those soft, wide, open eyes, were still the same. "No," I said quietly. "I don't hate you." Relief flashed across his face, just briefly. "I don't know where we go from here," he said, watching me. "But I'd really like to find out, if you'll let me." I didn't answer with words. I leaned in and kissed him again. That night, we didn't do much more than kiss. He stayed in the room, curled up beside me in the bed, fully clothed, just close enough that I could feel his body next to mine. It felt unreal. Like something I'd dreamed about for so long, I didn't know how to let myself enjoy it when it was finally happening. I didn't sleep much, but not for the reasons I expected. Every time I drifted off, I'd wake up just to make sure he was still there, that this wasn't some weird, lingering dream from the past. But every time I looked over, I'd see him, eyes closed, breathing slow, one hand resting lightly on the space between us. He was here. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. When I woke up the next morning, the first thing I noticed was the sunlight pouring in through the gap in the blackout curtains. The second was the weight on my shoulder. "Liam!" His head was resting against me, one arm draped across my stomach like we'd been sleeping like this for years. His breathing was slow, warm against my neck. His body relaxed, heavy with sleep. For a second, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, not moving, because something about it felt dangerous, like if I shifted even an inch, the spell would break, and I'd wake up alone again, wondering if I'd imagined all of it. But I hadn't. He stirred a little, brow twitching like he was halfway to waking up. Then his fingers flexed where they were resting on my chest, and he let out a soft breath. I should have felt weird about it, maybe even anxious, but I didn't. What I felt was peace. Uneasy peace, sure, but Peace. Eventually, he blinked awake, turning his head slightly to look at me. Hey, he said, voice rough with sleep. Hey, he pulled back a little, suddenly unsure, like maybe now in the daylight things were going to change. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes and looking around the room like he was just remembering where he was. Sorry, he muttered. I didn't mean to. It's okay, I said quickly. I didn't mind. He glanced over, expression cautious, searching. You sure? I nodded. He ran a hand through his hair, which was sticking up in every direction. I haven't slept like that in a long time. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded again and kicked off the covers. We got dressed slowly, in this sort of awkward rhythm where we weren't sure if we were supposed to keep talking or just let it be quiet. Eventually, Liam broke the silence. So, breakfast? Yeah, I said, reaching for my phone. They've got a pretty decent buffet downstairs. We headed down, grabbed food, and ended up back in the lounge from the night before. Same spot, same little table. Only this time, the morning light made everything look less dramatic, less loaded. I poked at my scrambled eggs. What time's your cousin's panel? 11, he said. I'm heading over in a bit, I nodded. You driving back today? Tomorrow. Figured I'd hang around, see some of the city. Then he looked at me again, that same searching expression from earlier. Unless you're busy? I looked up, met his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like guarding myself. I'm not, he smiled. You want to do something? Like what? He shrugged, sipping his coffee. I don't know, walk around, catch up, be normal people for a few hours. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Yeah, I said. Let's do that. We spent the day like we were just old friends reconnecting. Walked through Centennial Park, browsed an art exhibit at some pop-up gallery he found on his phone, even sat through a dumb VR demo at the convention center just to laugh at how bad it was. It was easy. Too easy. The more time I spent with him, the more I remembered why I'd fallen for him in the first place. He was still funny in that offbeat, try-too-hard way, still thoughtful, still noticed when I got quiet and waited it out without pushing. But there was something new, too. He didn't avoid eye contact now. He didn't flinch when our hands brushed or when I caught him watching me. It was like he was finally seeing me. Not just as a friend or a safe person to confide in, but as someone he wanted. For real. And that scared me more than anything. Because I wasn't sure I could do this again. Later that evening, we were back in my room. He was leaning against the window, watching the sun dip below the skyline. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through my phone, pretending not to care that he hadn't said anything in a while. Then he spoke. I meant what I said last night. I looked up. Which part? All of it. He turned to face me, eyes serious now. Especially the part about still wanting you. I set my phone down. I don't know what you want from me, Liam. I said honestly. This isn't high school anymore. I'm not just gonna wait around for you to figure yourself out. I'm not asking you to, he said. I'm figuring it out now. I don't want to walk away this time. I stood slowly, closing the space between us. I don't want to get hurt again, I said, my voice quieter now. I know, he whispered. I'm not going to hurt you. He reached out and gently took my hand. Held it like it meant something. And for the first time, I believed him. We didn't kiss again that night. That surprised me, not because I expected things to go further. Truthfully, I didn't know what I expected. But because of how okay I was with it. There was no performance, no pressure. Just the quiet presence of someone I used to know, sitting next to me on a hotel bed like he was trying to earn the right to stay this time. We watched some dumb comedy movie on TV, the kind of thing with a laugh track and a canned audience, something I would have turned off immediately if I were alone, but he liked it. I could tell by the way his mouth quirked every time a joke landed. He didn't laugh out loud, not really, but he smiled. A lot. And I watched him more than the screen. Eventually, he turned to me. You ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't messed things up back then? I didn't answer right away. Sometimes, I said finally. He nodded like he'd expected that. I used to replay that night in my head, he said. In the car. The way you looked at me after I kissed you. You didn't say anything, remember? I did. I remembered everything. I was in shock, I said. You kissed me. And then told me to forget about it 5 minutes later. He winced. I was so scared. Not of you, of me. What it meant. I tilted my head. And now? He looked down at the comforter, fingers running over the seam like he was tracing the edge of something fragile. Now I'm tired of pretending, tired of hiding. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure I believed him. Not yet. I'm not saying I've got everything figured out, he added quickly. I don't, but I know what I feel. I know I want this. You. That hit me harder than it should have. He didn't say it like a line. There was no hesitation in his voice. No expectation either. Just truth. He wanted me. You know what's hard? I said, staring at the screen but not seeing it. It's not that you ran. It's that I never got to say goodbye. You didn't just disappear from my phone. You disappeared from my life. He nodded slowly. I know. And I hate that I did that to you. I turned to him. So, what do you want now? He didn't hesitate. Time. A chance to do things differently. To show you I mean it. I let out a slow breath, my chest heavy. That's not nothing, Liam. I know. We sat there for a long time. No more movie. No more small talk. Just quiet. And then I said something I didn't plan to say. Something that had been buried under years of frustration and confusion. I loved you, you know. His head snapped toward me, eyes wide. Back then, I clarified, in school. I didn't even realize it at the time. Not really. But I did. I loved you. He didn't speak. Just reached for my hand again. Took it carefully, like it might break. I think I did too, he said. I just didn't know how to name it. The air in the room shifted, like something unspoken had finally landed between us. We sat like that, hand in hand, long after the credits on the movie ended. And for the first time in years, it felt like we were finally on the same page. Liam stayed that night again, not because of some big moment or heated impulse, just because we weren't ready to part. There was something quietly sacred about sharing that space, that time. Nothing happened except sleep and quiet breathing, and the occasional brush of skin when we shifted in our sleep. When I woke up, he was already sitting on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, watching the sun spill in through the curtains like it was trying to decide if he should move. Hey, I said, voice low, scratchy. He looked back, smiled softly. Morning. What time is it? Almost 10. He glanced at the clock again, then turned toward me. I have to check out in an hour, he said, and I could already hear the weight behind it. I sat up slowly, sheets tangled around my legs. Right. The silence after that wasn't awkward. It was just heavy, like we both knew the moment was winding down, and neither of us wanted to rush it. He stood, started gathering his things. His backpack, hoodie, charger. Every movement felt a little too deliberate, like he didn't want to leave something behind by accident. Are you heading straight back to your cousin's? I asked. He shook his head. She flew out this morning. I'm just driving back. I nodded, chewing the inside of my cheek. Liam turned to me then, his face unreadable for a second. Then he exhaled like he was bracing himself. You want to stay in touch? He asked. It was a quiet question. Not desperate. Not even hopeful. Just genuine. Yeah, I said. I do. Not like before, he added quickly. Not just texting once every 6 months. I mean, actually try. I know what you mean. He stepped closer. I want to see where this goes. I'm not saying I have all the answers, but I want to find them with you. I looked at him for a long moment. This version of him was new to me. Vulnerable, open, maybe even scared, Not the Liam from high school, not the kid who kissed me and ran, but a man who knew he had messed up and was finally trying to fix it. I reached for his hand. "Let's try," I said, "but I need you to be honest with me. No disappearing. No silence." "No more silence," he promised. We walked out together. He waited for his Uber while I stood next to him, hands in my hoodie pocket, eyes on the pavement. We didn't hug, didn't kiss. It didn't feel like that kind of goodbye, because it wasn't one. His ride pulled up. He looked at me one last time and gave this half smile that looked like it hurt. "I'll call you tonight," he said. I nodded. Okay. Then he got in and left. That was the beginning, not the end. He did call. That night, and the next, and the one after that. The conversations were slow at first, cautious. But then, something shifted. We started talking like we used to, but different. More grounded, more real. Sometimes we talked about nothing. What we were watching, what we had for dinner. Other times, we talked about the past, what we lost, what we still had to figure out. Eventually, we started planning visits. A weekend in his city. Then one in mine. The more time we spent together, the easier it became. The mess didn't disappear, but it stopped defining us. And every time I thought, maybe this wouldn't work, he proved me wrong. He showed up, he stayed, he didn't run. It's funny, that night in the hotel room felt like a fluke. A random, painful, beautiful collision. But it turned out to be something else entirely. It was the beginning of something real. And I'm glad I opened the door.